Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Slay with Zay, and I am your trans tutor. So, thank you for joining me on this third episode. Third episode. So, on the first two episodes, we discussed transgender and what the word means, how it works, all that kind of fun stuff. And on the second episode, we discussed cisgender and what that means and how it works. If you have not watched those videos, please go back and watch those videos. It'll help you to understand what we're going to be talking about on this video, which is about biological sex and your gender identity and how those two can correlate, but how they can also be different. Most of the time when people are arguing about if transgender people, when they say who they are, they use biological sex in an effort to disassociate or detach them from who they say that they are. So in this episode, I'm going to do a little bit of conversation about that. So I'm not a scientist. I don't really care for science like that, if I want to keep it honest. So it's going to be a little bit up to you all to do a little bit more independent study about what's been done. Trust me, I did research these things, so I'm just talking. But I'm not a scientist, and you might want to go research people or ask a real scientist about how this all works. So with that being said, let's get into this episode. Biological sex versus your gender identity. Let's go. Now, let's begin. We talked quite a bit and extensively on the last two episodes about what gender is. But just to rephrase it one more time, is that your gender is a societal construct that has been created and given to you based upon your biological sex. Okay? It is something that is separate away from your biological sex. Now, it's based upon it, but it's not guaranteed. It is a social structure that has been created. And in the last few episodes, we dispelled certain things about like how boys may not like blue, or how girls may not like the color pink, or things that are traditionally girly like ballet or art and things like that. Or boys may not like things that are trucks and sports and things like that. And that is okay. Those are societal expectations we have placed upon our cultures, various cultures, in order to keep gender and biological sex in line. They have been created in order to do that. But we know there are girls who don't do those things. There are boys who don't do those things as well. In fact, there is no direct correlation between this is a boy child and this is a girl child and they're going to do X, Y, and Z. Every single person is their own person. Even people who are identical twins are their own person. So you have to let people be their own person. Your gender is something that your brain and the way that you attach and the way that you associate with the world and how you want the world to associate back with you. So for example, I will use me as an example. Ding. I am a transgender woman. That means that my biological sex was determined to be male at birth, and that's okay. But what I did is I transitioned, I moved on the gender spectrum because I can't change my biological sex, but I can change my gender identity because people don't know what your biological sex is when they see you. They assume what it is, but they do not know for sure because genetics and biology are a little bit more complicated and nuanced, and a lot of people are not scientists or medical professionals. So we have to really stop assuming what people's gender and biological sex are because we could be terribly wrong. Okay? So again, my biological sex is determined to be male, but my gender identity is a woman. See? Two different things. Male and woman. And we'll talk more about that in just 1 second. Now, you could be definitely asking yourself, how can she be a male but still be a woman? Those two don't go together. That doesn't make sense. But in fact, it does. Because your biological sex, again, is independent of itself and separate from your gender identity. So let's start with my identity as a woman. That is a gender construct because people who are women are given such characteristics as maternal, sweet, passive, soft-spoken, gentle, those kind of things. We attribute those qualities to womanhood, to girlhood. We attribute those things, and the society rewards you for performing those tasks. Because we know sometimes if women do not perform those tasks, or they do not seemably perform those tasks enough for the society standpoint, they could be demonized. For example, Serena Williams, a tall, powerful black woman who is cisgender, but is demonized because of her stature, her strength, her size. Also women like Megan Thee Stallion or Ciara. Those women are demonized in those ways because of how they are built. They're not small, they're not passive, they're not weak, they're not any of the things we attribute to womanhood. They may be those things sometimes, but it's not a constant. That's the line of womanhood. Okay? Maternal, sweet, all those things. Those are characteristics. But people are going to draw the line in the sand with biology. So let's dispel that now. So most people will say, well, I am a real woman, or that's not a real woman because she can't do X, Y, and Z. So the X, Y, and Z is typically attributed directly to their sexual organs because women get reduced down to that a lot of the time. So, you know, she does not have a vagina. Okay? Is a vagina that what makes a woman? Because biology says that people who are male can have vaginas too. We'll talk about that in a moment. Or she cannot have or she has to have a period to make a woman. But cis women don't have periods all the time. Or cis women can't get pregnant. So basically it reduces it down to the biological sex. But gender is not that. I'm not saying I'm female. I'm saying that I am a woman. There is the difference. The difference is I'm not a female. I am a woman. That is the difference. Or I'm a girl. That's the difference. I am not a female. Now, there may be some trans people who differ, but that's a separate conversation. Female versus woman. All right, so now that we've talked about that, the biological sex versus the gender identity, let's try to dive a little bit deeper into biological sex. And again, I am not a biologist, nor am I a scientist, so I'm going to do the best I can to try to explain this as clearly as I can. So let's take a trip in our minds back to the 7th, 8th, 9th grade, whenever we took biology in high school or elementary school. And so typically when they were talking about your biological sex, they were referencing the sexual chromosomes, the hormonal chromosomes, and things like that. We typically call the X and Y chromosomes. So if you were assigned to be a female at birth, then you were typically going to have the XX chromosomes. And if you were going to be assigned male at birth, you would be given the XY chromosome. Okay? Now, a large majority of people are going to be born with these biological sexes. Okay, with these chromosomes. However, there are people who do not carry these. For example, there are women and there are females who have the XXX chromosome. So are they super women? Are they more women? Are they more female than women who don't have those? So, and then people who are XYY, are they more male? Are they more manly? What's happening here? Where's the fine line? There isn't one. And to add insult to injury, some genetic codes don't have the extra pairing. Sometimes it's just X. Sometimes it's just Y. Genetics, we can't explain things. These are mutations that happen in science. Everything is not concrete. There is a shade of gray in the middle between the black and the white. We have to allow this to happen. If science does it, then we can't, as a society, dictate who's going to be what and who's going to be this and that and this. We can't do that. So, in addition to that, we have to talk about people who are intersex. People who are born intersex are going to have varying types of genetics with the chromosomes. They can have combinations of XXY. How does that Y affect them? Are they going to appear feminine? Are they going to develop breasts? Are they going to have the phenotypical characteristics of a female woman, but maybe they have a small penis that is an enlarged clitoris? These are things you have to consider. You can't just cancel people out when you're talking about black and white, XX and XY. Biology is much more nuanced and complicated than that. Now, according to the CDC, approximately 385,000 babies are born a year in the United States. Okay? A lot of babies. A lot of y'all being nasty out there. Nasty. So, aside from that, 1 out of 1,000 babies are born intersex, which means that if you do the math, is 385 babies approximately will be born intersex, which means their genetic code will be some varying combination of this, which means that they could be born with different phenotypical characteristics based upon their genotypes. So when they come out of the womb, they could have a tiny penis that could be, clitoris. They could also have a vagina at the same time. We don't know if they're gonna have breasts or not, but their genotype will influence their phenotype. And so when these babies are born, they are born with their biological sex already intact. The parents usually have to make a decision about how to raise this child, because this child can grow up and have a gender identity that correlates with either one of these things. They could say, oh, well, this baby has a vagina, and then let's say that they do have ovaries and things like that. Maybe they're going to grow up and be a woman, and we'll be okay with that. That's not always the case, because gender identity is separate. And there are lots of studies around intersex babies when they grow up, and they're trying to figure out how come they think and feel this way, and how come their body is this way. A lot of people believe that intersex surgeries upon birth are mutilation, and they should just let the child grow. But that's to each its own, and everyone has to make that own decision. But there are studies that say once you make a choice for a child, then it's going to be some discrepancies upon their growth. When they grow up and they're trying to figure out who they are and how they fit into the world, there have been discrepancies and there have been issues, and in some cases, severely at the extreme, the child has taken their own life because they are not aligned with who they're supposed to be. So, when you're choosing a gender for yourself, it allows you to make the decision about how you wish to interact with the world. And that is why transgender people are making decisions about their lives, because biological sex does not guarantee anything. So we have to let go of the idea that biology ultimately determines everything, because at the end of the day, it does not determine everything. We've talked about the sexual organs because most people typically attribute that to the difference between cisgender people and transgender people. Why this person can be a woman and why this person can't be a man, and da-da-da-da-da. So let's go to the brain, because, the body can definitely die, but if the brain is still functioning and operating, it will still live. The brain has that much power. The brain and the heart, where most people make their decisions, or they're torn between their decisions, between their brain and their heart. The most high power functioning organs in the body. Just saying. So the brain is going to have constant development, and we know the brain constantly develops over time. It takes time to get a fully developed adult brain. But in the womb, as a fetus, the brain is developing at a much slower rate than the biological sex that's being created. So if your genes said, clink, clink, here we go, and they start creating biological sex for you, usually around the 10th week or so. They say that in the 10th week, your genetics start to form your biological sex. So everyone starts off as some sort of female in the womb, and then they eventually develop based upon what combinations you have. So once the Y gets introduced into the equation, most of the time manhood, maleness is going to be immediately attributed to your gender identity, to your biological sex. But if your brain is still developing and it's taking longer than your body, so for example, for me, I'll speak for myself personally, when my body was being created, it was like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna drop these testes now. The brain's still kind of sending out these slow signals, but we'll get there eventually. And my brain could have very much went a different way, and my body could have went a very much different way. It is feasible, it is possible, because mutations in the body happen all the time. If we want to go all the way back to the beginning of life itself, when it comes to the humanity of people, everyone was started off in Africa. We know that to be true. So how come everyone's not black? Because of mutations. Some people stayed in Africa, some people went this way, some people went this way, blah, blah, blah. But either way, the point is that people who went to the northern part of the world got a lighter skin complexion. Hence why we have Caucasian white people. Hence why we have Asian people of lighter complexions. Because they went to these places that did not sit on the equator. Their skin mutated over time. And so genetics, because we're part of nature, do get mutated. They do change over time. So your genotype and your phenotype can be affected in various ways, thus giving us people who are trans. And let's kind of wrap up the idea of the brain real quick here. So there have been a multitude of studies around cisgender people and transgender people and how their brains are different, okay? And here's a little bit of knowledge for you. There have been studies around cisgender women and cisgender men and their counterparts, trans women and trans men. So when it came to transgender women and transgender men, even prior to taking hormonal therapy to align their body and their mind, people who were trans on the spectrum, on the far ends of man and woman, their brains were already in line, more in line with their gender identity, which means that a transgender woman upon birth naturally has the brain of a woman, a lot more often than not. And the same thing for men. For trans men, their brain is more often than not the same or equal to the structure, the function, all those things that a cisgender man is going to have. So this basically means that our brains are functioning in the same capacity, no matter size or anything like that. So if a cisgender woman and a transgender woman were taking a test of some sort, they will have the same level, the same thought process, the same kind of emotional capacities when it comes to the brain structure and the way that the brain fluid works. Neurologists have done these examples and done these tests and such and so forth. So if the brain's not different and the body's the only thing that's different and the hearts are the same, then what's really keeping trans and cis people apart is the societal pressure to uphold and keep gender and biological sex in line. But biology is not even in line, but gender is this rigid box that people are trying to keep them in, this line. So if biological sex is fluctuating and moving based upon your brain, your heart, and your sexual organs that are created, but gender is this rigid thing, why are we trying to fit this loose moving thing into this rigid box? It doesn't make sense. So it's something to think about. And of course, I don't have numbers and statistics and things like that because I've only read and researched what I know. But there are plenty of studies that you can do. Look up things about people who have done tests on transgender people as far as their brain structure in comparison to their cis counterparts. It will help to understand things further. So, biological sex at the end of the day does not immediately determine your gender identity. They can correlate, but they are not one and the same. So, now that we've gotten to the end of this, let's go ahead and wrap it up and put a nice little bow on it. So, people are born with a genetic code in their biological sex. They are given chromosomes by their body. They inherit it naturally. But that does not determine their gender identity, okay? Gender identity is a social construct that was created to correlate with biological sex. Correlate does not mean on the same line. It means they move in the same direction. So, gender identity revolves around that. But biology is something that is fluctuating and moving that we just figured out. Gender also moves at the same time because we talked about it being mutable before. So, if we have these two wiggly things, why are we trying to keep them from moving? Let them move. Release the chains. Let them be. Okay? Because ultimately, your biological sex doesn't determine your gender identity anyway. So, let things be the way that they are and allow people to exist in the way that they exist. Okay? Okay. Yay! We made it to the end. I know that was a lot more information to digest because, again, science is a little bit more woo! And again, I'm not a scientist, so please go do further research. Learn things for yourself. It's very important for us to know things. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Access it. Use it. It's good for you. Okay? We have so much accessibility now with these phones. Might as well use them good for something, right? So, thank you for watching this episode of Slay with Zay. If you like the content, please share it, retweet it, favorite it, whatever you have to do. Put it on TikTok, something. You know, you guys are so instrumental in the success of this show. So you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can subscribe on YouTube. Please leave comments so we can have a further dialogue about this. A healthy adult conversation. Healthy adult conversation. Use the hashtag Slay with Zay so that we can keep the conversation consolidated in one area so we can continue to help inform and uplift other people in the transgender community. So, thank you again for watching this beautiful episode of Slay with Zay.